Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm Todd Nesloney, principal, educator, author, and I'm so thrilled this week to be able to bring you another guest. I love doing these Tell Your Story episodes, and the whole reason this series started was for me to be able to bring the stories of others who have inspired or challenged or made me feel encouraged and bring you their stories, and hopefully it'll bring some encouragement or challenge to you in your life. This week, I've got a very special guest. I have Tyler Thompson. So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself, Tyler?
Hello, I'm Tyler. I am currently serving in the role of my school's behavior intervention specialist, which I started that last year. It's been quite a learning curve for me because nothing qualified me to be the behavior specialist. Before that, I was what I would just call like a regular teacher doing my thing in my second grade and then fourth grade classroom, which I loved. And I made that leap of faith into working in behavior, which is super complex, as you know, working in administration. You are dealing with all kids. In my school's K-6, so I'm getting to know all kids, which has been quite interesting. I love it. It's very different than serving in the classroom. So I support teachers, I support kids, and it just allows me to get into contact with all of my kids. And when I say all of my kids, I mean all 751 of them. So it's been an amazing. How long were you
teaching in the classroom before this move?
So I was in the classroom for 6 years.
And what did you teach?
So my math might be wrong. So I taught fourth grade for 2 years, and then I jumped over to second grade, and then I moved over back to fourth grade, and that was a great move for me. And then I was doing my administrative internship, and my principal came to me and said, "Hey, the district is rolling out this new position. Are you interested in taking it? And it would be a great, thing to do alongside your internship. It's going to give you more office opportunities, more time to work with kids. And it's just going to give you a glimpse into admin." And so I said, that makes the most sense. Why not do it? So I did it. And she gave me some great advice. So she said, I wouldn't take this job though, because once you take this job, you may not want to go back into the classroom just because the schedule is way different. Your day looks different. And you may not want to go back into the classroom, which some days I miss it. I go do lessons in classrooms. I sit in classrooms one-on-one with kids. And so some days I really do miss just work bonding and, hanging out with my 30 kids, and really connecting with them. So that's a little bit different. Do I miss the classroom? Absolutely. But this role is very interesting, and just every day looks completely different.
So did you have any hesitation about taking this position?
I did, and she knew that. I felt like in the moment she asked me, we were at a luncheon meeting all of our peak partners for ATP. And she asked me as our luncheon was ending, and she said, "Hey, there's just a great opportunity that's coming your way, possibly. What do you think?" And I felt like I needed to answer in the moment. And she said, take the weekend, really think on it. And so I did what all great educators do. I went home and made a pros and cons list. And I just tried to, I tried for the pros to outweigh the cons, which was hard because I didn't know what the role was going to look like. There was nobody in my position ever in the district. So I didn't have anyone to go to say, hey, what does a day look like? Or what does this role really entail?
So did you get to create the expectations for that role as it has evolved? Or were you kind of given very clear guidelines that this is what we want this to be?
It was pretty, there were guidelines from my district. Like they posted a job posting and they said, here's what your day is going to look like, which a lot of that just includes me overseeing all of PBIS in my school and ensuring that there's equity in that. Mm-hmm. However, I make the role what I choose to make it. There are roughly 10 to 12 other interventionists that are serving in my same role at the elementary level. And just in comparing notes and just talking to them, our days are very different. Right. Sometimes they've said like I'm doing recess duty and I'm doing bus duty, where I was doing more of office work and intervening with kids. I wasn't doing necessarily push-in. I was more pulling them out. We would do a quick check-in. I was making connections with their parents. And
Right.
so I felt like to say I was prepared is completely wrong, because I wasn't.
Right.
I was simply, do it because we think you make great connections with kids, which, I mean, that's a perk. I love that. But it was definitely something that I had no clue what I was doing. And the district kind of said, here's what our vision is, go.
Right.
And so we as interventionists have been building what that role looks like. The district hired a district coach to oversee all of us, which has been amazing because she's really knowledgeable in the realm of behavior. So she assists us, she helps us, but other than that, it was just, you do what your administrator asks you to do, and then you kind of go where the need is.
So what's been something that you have unexpectedly learned from being in this position?
That's a lot of things, I would say. But being that my building and my district where we implement PBIS, and we're all in different areas and we have different strengths as a building, or in our buildings. However, for me, my biggest takeaway was that whole idea of setting up a universal system and how
Right.
difficult that is. Because as someone may be saying, yes, I'm doing this full on in my classroom, and that may not always be the case, or it's a mess up on my part because I didn't communicate as effectively with my teachers.
Right.
And so I have to kind of take a step back often and realize, okay, if I was the teacher, would I really understand what this guy's saying here? And would I really understand what he's wanting me to do? And just the whole question of what does that look like, is probably in the back of my mind all the time. Every email that I write, every phone call that I have with teachers, because I want them to know, okay, this is clearly what I want you to do. Do you have any questions? How can I support you? Can I come into the classroom and show you what that looks like? So I'd say just being very clear with my communication and intentional would be.
What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself through this position?
Like before, many things, but I would say I'm very much a big idea person. I have lots of big ideas, and I need help from my team in building those ideas and kind of scaffolding down and saying, okay, what is step one going to look like? What is step two going to look like? Because I may have this crazy vision of, here's my big idea. It's going to change our school culture and everyone's going to love it. And then it falls flat because my delivery was horrible, or all it was a big idea and nobody ever put the proper steps into motion.
I love that. So being in this position, you've probably got a whole different perspective on what all the different types of classrooms that are there, the different teaching styles, things like that. And knowing the experiences that you've learned as well at this position, what advice would you give to a first-year teacher that you've learned through all your experiences?
Just the power of relationships with our kids. I want to say that's like the foundation of any classroom. If you don't have a solid relationship with your kids, which leads to management, which leads to student engagement, you're going to struggle. So don't worry, the curriculum and the content will fall into place. There's PD for that. There you have, your team to look at, you have your administrator, your evaluator to help you with that. But when you're in that classroom for, 6.5 hours a day, just with your kids, you have to build that connection with them. You have to know what makes them tick. You have to know what motivates them, both intrinsically and extrinsically. We need to be able to build strong connections with every kid. And if I could go back to my first year as a teacher, if I knew then what I know now, things would look a little different. I think I've always been strong at building connections, but being a extrovert and someone who talks a lot, I tend to gravitate to those kids in my classroom because they get my humor and they're the ones to, come up with sarcastic responses sometimes. And I think it's funny. So I would have focused more on my kids that were probably shyer and the ones that are, are easy. They can easily fit in and kind of fly under the radar. I would have made it my goal and my mission to seek opportunities to, get to know those kids better.
Right.
And that's something that I just, I talk to our first year teachers in our building just new people, the power of relationships.
Now you've also got 2 of your own children, right?
I do.
And how old are they?
So Anthony is 9. He just turned 9 in December, and Ella is 3. Um, and we just got back from swim lessons, so I'm like rushing home. Like, I need to get on this. I need to talk to Todd. But it's every, like today, like for example, in Washington State, it's cold where I'm at, and like flu and cold is taking over my building.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm worried, like, oh gosh, am I going to bring that home to my kiddos? And my kiddo comes to school with me. So he sees dad in multiple facets. Like, I'm teacher, I'm behavior interventionist, I'm dad. So it's interesting for him, I think. But yeah, they keep things very interesting. And my perspective as an educator has changed since having kids. Because I tell people, I hold my kids' teachers, I have high expectations for them. I want them to like my kids. I want them to, be able to really know my kids. And so I feel like my job is then to model that for all the teachers in my building, build connections with my parents, build strong relationships with the kids, and then just really get to know those kids. So how do you
balance the educator parent roles?
Currently not very well. Because I don't ever get that transition time. My son comes to school with me, like I said. So I start my morning with my family. We go to school together. He's talking my, ear off. If you have kids, anyone have kids at home, they know, when you're commuting with your kids, they're just nonstop. And so I get random questions all the time that sometimes I don't have the answers to. So we talk, he'll talk my ear off all the way to school. I get to school, and then it's time for me to kind of switch into professional mode, get there. And then he's right there. He's there right when the bell rings, and then we come home together. So I don't get a lot of time to kind of switch off of teacher professional role into dad mode. It's kind of just, I have to do it. And so I need to be better at that. That's kind of my goal is always, I need to be better at having that time where I can kind of switch that role and give both of them my all at one time.
And both of your children are adopted, correct?
They are, yes.
So what was that process like going through an adoption what was the biggest thing you learned through that process?
Patience. The process took a while. And there's lots of legalities that you have to, hoops to jump through. We have to, meet with, social workers, and you have to have a home study. And so that is just, it really makes you question, like the safety of your own home, which you would, take for granted. Like, I have stairs or I have a fireplace. That's, that's not a big deal. But those little things make you, like, I would wake up at night feeling like, oh gosh, we didn't cover every single outlet, or we didn't do such and such, because they check everything. Right. And so that was, and I was going through this process as a second-year teacher. So that was very interesting to me. And then more recently with my daughter, that was a little bit smoother as far as that goes, but it was just the up and down of, when are we going to get a final date? When is this going to be solid, set in stone? She's mine forever. So that was a little taxing, and that was last school year. That we wrapped all things up, and now we're good.
Do y'all have any interactions with the birth parents?
So we do not. Where we live, it's a small community, and so we are aware, and we know some people who know our kid or our kiddos, but that's about it. And obviously, our kids will grow up and they'll question, hey, you know that you're not our biological parents. I think we'll kind of have to cross that bridge when we get to it. And I bring that on. I'm super transparent with I will be transparent with my kiddo. That's my hope. But at this point, they're just my priority. So if it doesn't come up, I don't bring it up.
Right.
But it hasn't at this point, they're so little. But if they have questions, I will definitely answer them, because I feel like, I'm here to be your parent, and I'm here to support you no matter what. So if you have questions and you want to know more information, I can help you find that information, if you so choose for that. And if not, then I'll leave it at that.
So your oldest is 9, right?
Correct.
Does he ever ask any questions, knowing that you're not his birth father or anything like that? Has he asked anything about adoption or any of that?
He actually I feel like he is so oblivious to that. My son, for like if anybody that knows him knows that he is very, um, what's the word I'm looking for? He's a very typical little boy. He's
Hmm.
like, very quick to switch subjects. He's very quick to start to answer it, and then it's a new question. So he is very go, 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 go. So I don't think he's ever had time to actually sit and process, like, hey, and where are my biological parents, or you're
Right.
not my biological parents. Um, and I think, and that's okay. We'll cross, like I said, we'll cross
Yeah.
that bridge when we
Yeah.
get to it. He has mentioned things like, my adoption, and I'm adopted. And we make that very clear. We're not going to hide it from him. He knows
Yeah.
that it's apparent, and so we talk about it openly, and then it's kind of like he's on to the next subject.
Right. What's the biggest thing you learned about yourself becoming a father?
Patience. I felt like, I've been a teacher for a year. I'm pretty patient. And also just like those very typical situations where, you're at Target or Walmart shopping and you see somebody with their kid and their kid melting down, and you have that thought in the back of your mind, like, oh my gosh, control your kid. Um, you can't judge until you walk there in a mile in their shoes, and I'm walking the miles, and it's a struggle sometimes. And your kids, they're little humans, and they
Mhm.
have their own emotions that go up and down, and so I've had to be very patient. And also, like before, I have to be very clear with my communication, and I can't um, be super lenient with something. I have to be very firm in my decision making, and stand my ground when it comes to, I said no, you can't do that, and I mean no.
Yeah.
um, and that's difficult sometimes because, sometimes as a teacher or anyone, you worked all day, you're tired, and your kid has made a mistake, and you're, giving them some sort of consequence, you're taking something away, and it would be really easy just to give in and say, okay, fine, you can have it back, but you have to stand your ground, and that's sometimes difficult.
Right. So, if there's people listening or watching who are interested in adoption, what advice would you give them to even get started on that path?
I guess I would question your why. Like, why do you want to adopt? Why do you want kids? And then if you're really, really interested in that, I would seek to find someone who who's adopted. And then there's multiple pathways that you could go to adopting a child. So I would say find someone who's adopted before, or ask someone who may have some knowledge in that. Usually, like a school counselor usually has some information on that, or a home visitor. Because we see all kinds of families in schools, free public education. We see all kinds of kids, all kinds of families. And so for me, it was simple. Like for me, my own story was, I asked my attendance clerk. I knew that she had adopted some kiddos, and so I said, hey, I'm just curious, what does that entail?
Mhm.
And she pointed me in the right direction, and then things worked pretty quickly because we felt at that time like we're ready to do this, we're ready to
Yeah.
jump all in, and we did. And what is that, 6 years later, here we are.
That's awesome. So, in closing, the last question I want to ask you is, if there was one message that you was just so on your heart about anything that you just wish more people knew or understood or saw from you or anything like that, what would be that one message you'd share out?
Hmm. I would say, I think my message honestly changes. Like the more I read, the more
Mhm.
inspired I get from different individuals. But I think just understanding and knowing that all kids can be successful, and success doesn't always look like a typical 4-year college degree. Some people that I know just in my own personal life don't have a 4-year college degree, and they are so happy in their lives,
Mhm.
and they feel fulfilled. So don't put success into a box of it's just higher education and obtaining a bachelor's degree or master's degree. There's multiple avenues of success, and just knowing that every single kid can be successful, no exceptions.
I love it. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on and being a guest. I've loved following some of your journey with your children as well as what you're doing in education. So I appreciate you coming and sharing some bits and pieces of those stories with us today. So thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd.
And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. You can check out all new episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, or on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, and make sure you get out there and be brave enough to tell your story, because every story matters. Have a great night, everyone.